heal the root and you'll bear the fruit. Is your fruit tired, achy, poor in spirit? Is it rotten? Is it sour? Like, what is coming out of you? I always knew that I have a instinctive drive in me. And it's funny because in my book, I talk about this point where my whole being in, okay, so Buffalo, and then there's New York City. So my brother had graduated college, went to New York City, and that was the first time like us really experiencing, instead of just a visitation, of what it's like to live in New York City. So prior to me writing my book, I had gone and visit my brother, and he was living at the time. He was in the Bronx, but his original, when he first moved there, he was in the lower Manhattan East Side area, almost in the heart of the city. And throughout his 10, 15 years in New York City, he landed in Bronx, which was about half hour from where hopping on the train, getting in the city. So that was Pelham. So as soon as we landed in the city, I was just like, yep, that's what I've always felt internally. So I remember coming home that weekend, or after that weekend, and saying, this is now my new goal. I want to go back to school. I want to go to New York City. This is where I want to uproot my life, not from Buffalo to Columbus. But what if I had an opportunity to come to New York City and have that in me, that high energy, hustle, bustle, all the stuff that really match my alignment internally? Fast forward 20 something years, that hustle is still in me. And that's actually what I'm in the season now where it's about, you can identify the hustle, but what is on the other side of hustle if we don't even know what we're going or working towards? Because what happens when we achieve whatever it is that we're accomplishing? Do we allow ourselves to slow down and have that rest, to celebrate, to be in the presence? And these are all like newer things that I was experiencing in my journey because I didn't know that alternative. It was just one speed, fast drive, go. And so I've learned in my maturing of age that there is a fine balance. And I think that is what we're ultimately after, is that in between of chasing something externally to acknowledging our internal world and what we actually long for and desire. I don't know if did I answer your question? Because I feel like like you gave me a choice to live in New York City. I'll adapt, I'll be there, but that's definitely not my first choice at this time in my midlife life.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I think for a lot of people, it's easy to get attracted to the energy of what's going on because there's always something happening. There's always something to look at, something to see, someone to talk to. And, I think it goes back to that. Is it as wholesome and fulfilling as, maybe living in upstate New York or in Columbus, Ohio? Like, hey, these are probably a little bit slower paced. It might not be as exciting, but is it as fulfilling?
Honestly, that was my first thought when I moved. I was like, what's with these people? Why is everything so ass backwards and slow? Like, come on, let's.
Yeah.
To your point, it's just, I think as you get older, it's just you recognize that you can't sustain the same pace, speed, wants, desires you did in your teens, 20s, young adult life. But yeah.
I mean, even if you could, though, is it worth it? I guess is the question, because do you get to really stop and enjoy the thing that you have in front of you, or are you so busy taking it for granted to move on to the bigger, better next thing?
That one. And that was something that I learned when I published my book. It was the first time somebody ever asked me, what are you going to do to celebrate? I said, what? Celebrate what? She's like, you just spent years writing this book and you're about to publish it and release it. I said, the greatest thing about that is it's finally off the to-do list. It's been there for over 2 years. Like, that's my celebration, because we don't stop to recognize the hard work that went into it. We just look at it as like this annoying, nagging thing that you've been working towards. Why is it not done yet? And sometimes we can develop this, I guess, lack of a better word, maybe a resentment towards the project or idea or dream or goal because it's taking too long. So how do we find joy in this journey of accomplishing what we're setting out to achieve, but also to celebrate because you deserve that? It's admirable. The celebration keeps that win and that excitement going. So next time you work towards something, it's not just, okay, finally cross off the list, on to the next, on to the next. Right. And I think that is what a high achiever does, is because we're so focus driven on the performance and the outcome that we forget that there's an internal being that has to also be recognized and honored too. So how can we balance between those two? So that's something I think in the season that, I would have to say probably in these past 5 years has been that's the lesson and the journey that I've been on, is about intentionally slowing down. I don't always get it. And most times I fail at it. And I'll be honest, like it just, like, all right, that was another day. I did not even hit the mark. I didn't even come close. But what did I learn from it today? What can I bring in tomorrow? And so it's just a constant evolution of growth and development.
Mm. So I'm hearing you say there is it's more about the journey of finding yourself and finding the things that you learned along the way and what lessons did you learn, kind of uncovering more of who you are than just getting to the destination, checking the box, and then moving on to the next one. Is that right?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because who are you without that? So if you get to if you've arrived, which nobody's ever arrived, but let's just say you do arrive, how do you even know that you've arrived?
Yeah.
Because you haven't even experienced the growth that got you there. So how do you pick your head up and say, "Oh, I'm here," but you don't, because you've never gotten there.
Yeah. Well, I think it also highlights a great point in that when you say, I am here, who is even I? Because up until then, you are really just like a summation of a bunch of checkboxes. It's not really even you. It's just a bunch of accomplishments to Wikipedia page. It's not your personality. It's not any kind of lessons. It's not any kind of like character. And I think people miss that part in developing it. We're just looking for bigger, better, stronger next, rather than uncovering and building character and who we are. I love that part.
Exactly. Right, because it's all about the way I see it, it's all about preparation. We're preparing for our next assignment, but we don't even know what that assignment is. So if we just keep, head down, grind, 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 and we pick our head up and we're like, where the hell am I? How did I even get here? But yet, who am I at this point? But yet, who do I need to become to get to where I need to be? But if I don't even know where I'm going, why does it matter? And we start questioning these things. So it becomes this internal, I guess, conflict. And that's sometimes where this discontentment and or resentment can come in, because you're not at where you need to be. You haven't refined and defined who you are today. So there's this great dividing gap. And that's where we can pick up, why haven't I gotten there? Why haven't I achieved this? Why haven't I done this? Blah, blah, blah. And that can deem value into like that there's something inherently wrong with you, or you haven't made it, or you're worthless, like those things that play on our worth, and based off worth and achievement based off of the identity. But what
Right.
is that identity? So to your point, like the who am I had really been the catalyst into everything that I've asked myself. So that's a big piece of what my book is, because even for the journey itself, I had to figure out who I was and who I am, and then who do I need to become to achieve this purpose driven life that I'm after.
Mm. So when you talk about the constant pursuit of trying to create this next version of you for the next assignment, I feel like that's where a lot of people will stumble, because they are trying to figure out, who am I? Who do I need to be? What is my next assignment? Where I'm going to make an assumption here. I think you would say that's probably where faith comes in most important in that part. Is it doesn't matter what your next assignment is. Your assignment is already written for you. You will figure it out over time. Let's be the best version of you, and everything will make sense at a certain point.
100%.
Is that right?
All things are possible. Yeah.
So where does that, let's rewind a little bit to previous version of Rachel, where you may not have understood that yet. Was there like a certain part of your journey that really clicked for you and said, hey, this is really what makes sense, and now I understand?
Yeah, and that's a lot of what I talk about in the book. So in this chase, so this metaphorical chase that we're chasing, this perfection, like what is perfection? Perfect in every capacity. Finally, we're rested. We got the achievement, we got the accolades, we got the success, whatever this fill in the blank is, that everything would be just so. Because when everything's just so, now we can find the time to be like, oh, it's that concept of this have, do, be. But what faith teaches us, it's be, do, have. Because when you know who you are, everything else just aligns. So when you get to be the person, you get to do the thing that God has called you for. He's equipped you with the tools, resources, skills, gifts, all the things, right? So then you can have this purpose-driven life, which God has created and ordained and orchestrated for you on your behalf. But it's about letting go and embracing that surrender. But surrender is one of the hardest things as somebody who is a high achiever, who's constantly chasing, because what is surrender? That is intentional rest. But what is rest? Rest is part of the success recipe. We have to intentionally rest, but then also rest is part of the what I would call is kind of the check-in, right? Because when we're rested, we can now embrace what God has called us to. So we can have these one-on-one conversations. We're rested in the presence. We're tapping into prayer. We're listening to the Holy Spirit. We're being guided. We're tapping into our innate calling. What are we being nudged and guided towards? But if we're in a place of performance in this action, this do, we never have that ability to check in, because now we put the pressure on us to be the God, and we're not.
Hmm.
So there's a whole this can go really really deep, because this is part of my own passion and my purpose. But the who am I was where I found myself at this bottom of this pit probably close to 10, 12 years ago. And the catalyst to that was when I had lost my brother. Because now when we have this devastating loss, it's like, okay, you're picking up these pieces, but who am I without this life? Who am I without this person that was a big piece of who I am? But then the question is, who am I in general? Like, I've never had to ask myself that question. I was just floating, right? So sometimes we just sleepwalk or autopilot through life without questioning our identity, our purpose, and what we're created here for intentionally, like just here to serve, to love, to lead, all of those things. So the I am was the beginning of the journey. And when I figured out who I was at that season, it's not going to be the same person I am now, 10, 12, 15, 20 years later, right? The evolution. And, I wouldn't even say like the evolution, meaning the process, but as we're evolving, we're developing and growing. And with growth, that's where where I feel like God is refining and defining us as He's building those character strengthening skills to prepare us for our next assignment.
Yeah. It reminds me a lot of a saying that I heard, that you'll never hear the voice of God if you're so busy looking for what you expect it to sound like.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that really reigns so true here, in that there are so many people who expect it to be this certain way or this certain thing. And really, it's more about being open and being still and being willing to listen to whatever that voice might be, whatever that nudge might be, even if it's not exactly what you pictured it to be, right? And we have this desire to be in control of all things, and hey, we can make the next best decision right now and get that dream lifestyle tomorrow. But hey, maybe for you in your specific journey, you need to go this route, right? And even if this route might seem a little bit longer than the route that you want to take, hey, maybe there's a lesson over here that you need to pick up to be able to really enjoy and steward that blessing when you get it.
Right, 100%. And it's sometimes we don't even realize what the lesson is. And you ever find yourself in the same, you feel like, I've already been in this classroom. Like, why are we because the lesson hadn't been learned in that season of life.
Mm.
But now that you've recognized the same setting, the same situations, you just pick up these patterns and familiar. Oh, okay. You know what? This isn't the end of the world. There's something here I have to find. Whereas before, if you did not have that awareness, that ignorance per se, we would just say, oh, this is happening to me. Like, what is it? Why? And we just get defensive. We feel like it's an attack on who we are. But yet the question is, who are we really? So it becomes this conversation that happens internally. And if we don't have the insight and awareness, we can take life and misconstrue it. And then that element of control, because life isn't happening in a way that we thought it would. So
Right.
now we're taking back that power, and we're essentially trying to create and force something that has not had a chance to naturally unfold on its own. And that's where we're doing life with God. So a lot of like these words and things that I even use in my branding is about like create, right? So we can create with our co-creator, or co-create with our creator. But the more important thing is not us trying to take control and the helm to create something to overstep on God, because we're not working on His time. No, there's always a place where we just need to be intentional, and we seek to understand, and then things will be revealed to us. But if we're in a place on our phone, buried, noise everywhere, right? We're constantly being uh, bombarded for our attention. We're being fought for our attention through these distractions and busyness of life. But the intentional slowdown allows us to see things more clearly. That's why in the season I'm in, it's a lot of taking all your programming, all of your thoughts, habits, beliefs, behaviors, and you're trying to dismantle that in a way that is God honoring and serving, but also conducive to the betterment of your calling here.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I love the concept of surrender in that, because I think so many people feel like surrender is such a weak word, and when you surrender, you're giving up control, and hey, now you're just at a bag in the wind, right? You have no control over what's going on. And that's a really big struggle point for people, especially when they don't feel loved, appreciated, seen, and heard for who they are, if they don't even know who they are to begin with. Because they attach so much of their identity to, hey, this is who I am.
Yeah,
and if I don't stand really strong and yell from the mountaintops, this is who I am, what am I? Right? And if I surrender, I'm even less.
Right. And like I said, my book has been, I'll be honest, it's one of the most vulnerable, transparent things that I've ever created in my whole life. And I had to come in terms with like the word surrender. I'm like, but I want full control. Then it was about vulnerability. I was like, that's a weak word too. I don't want to be seen as weak. But then I was just, as you continue growing into your own element and identity and the person that God has created for it, like, honestly, I just don't care. I really do not care what people think of me. And that was a big thing because as a perfectionist, I'm a former people pleaser. A lot of that depended on, could I make people happy? Because if they're happy, then I'm happy. Could I please people so that their needs are being met and I can show that I genuinely care and I love, right? So this can get into a whole different like area, but what I had learned in that concept of me being starved of it because I did not have the love, the awareness, the understanding my identity, my worth, my faith, all the depths that I have now. I looked at it through that lens of what can I gain by doing my actions. And one of the things that stood out to me, somebody had mentioned this, and I was just like, let me chew on this because I got to think this over. And they had said, people pleasing or the power for control is essentially a form of manipulation. And I was like, no, that's not my intention. I'm not here to manipulate. I'm here to actually make things easier for people, help people, please people, love people. And then when I sat with this for a little bit, I could see how things could be misconstrued, but the intentionality, because if you're not crystal clear on who you are, you can't be crystal clear on your intentions either. So there was a form of some sort of manipulation because it's like, at the end of the day, I just wanted to be loved. I wanted to be noticed. I wanted somebody to say, hey, great job. And I think we all want that because it's just a form of validation. It's just a fact of being seen and heard. And those are natural. Those are human instincts. Who doesn't want to be seen and heard? Who doesn't want to be noticed? But what if your actions are leading you in a place that are being seen and heard for all the wrong things? What if you can just show up and just be you? What could be made possible? And I was thinking, okay, well, if I could just be me, at least I don't have to pretend. So there's 1,000 pounds off my weight. Well,
Right.
if I could just be me, then I don't have to perform. Great. So now there's one less thing I got to do. And then it's so this constant unfolding. So that's why I say I don't care what people think of me because I have developed such a deep relationship with myself and attached it to my identity, and I pour all of that in through my faith. So my truth and my identity are found in the Word. My identity is found in Christ. My truth is found in the Bible, and that's how I live. My faith-based principles and beliefs are from that. It's not for everybody, but you know what? It aligns me because it takes me off the hook from any sort of performance. I don't have to do. I already am.
Hmm. How do we take this same concept and apply it to relationships or to marriage?
I always go back. I forget what philosopher it was. You catch me off the cuff here. I would say, "To thine own self be true." Right. So that the philosophical aspect of it. So when you know yourself, you can stop looking at others from a place of judgment, and you just meet them where they're at. Because when you're open to just understanding that everyone is uniquely different, there's a human behind everything. And so when you're not projecting or pushing any of your agenda or um, wants and needs on other people to meet those, that's part of the surrender, right? We're surrendering to these relationships. The relationship of, you know what, that's who they are. They're not me. I can't force them. I can't control them. I can't please them. I can't do this. And it was a lot of what I had to unlearn. And so for relationships, I would just say that it's meeting the individual where they're at, being open, being understanding, and practicing active listening. because in that space is where we learn so much of the individual, and we're not forcing anything of ourselves onto them, and we're open. So what can be gained from that? We can learn, we can understand, we can have compassion, we can have more empathy. It deepens our levels. So if we're already at a level where we're content in understanding who and what we are, like where we're at in this journey, then we don't need to do anything else. There's no performance. And especially with relationships, it's hard. I would say that marriage is one of the hardest relationships that you have to encounter, because there's so many, there's two people that are fighting for something similar, but yet we're going about it differently. And then we have relationships with our friends, our kids, our coworkers, and then there's acquaintances, and then there's people, all these degrees of relationship separation. But the number one relationship you have that you live with every single day is the one you have with yourself. And so everything becomes a mirror at that point. So again, my relationship starts with my faith. My faith is now my focal point. So I run everything through that lens. And then I look at the other relationships in my life through that lens, because I'm crystal clear on who I am.
Right. So what I'm hearing you say there is kind of the order of operations for relationships should be God, yourself, your spouse, your family, everything else below that.
100%. I had it all backwards. I thought that if I could please others, they'll love and accept me, and therefore that's a reflection of God did a good job. That's not how it works. Not how it works.
Yeah, well,
I'm not here to please God.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not here to please people. I'm here to live my God purpose, calling, and my assignment through the identity, through my gifts, abilities, talents, and skills that He has given me. Everything else, I'm already equipped, right? So if we're finding ourselves in the wrong relationships or the wrong places or the wrong positions, I wouldn't even say that they're wrong. There's something to be learned from it. But what can we do to be to live out that intention in a positive way that still does, and I don't want to say that not pleasing God, but yet we have to please God because we're all children of God. So what are we doing in a way that's just treating humanity with love, respect, kindness, goodness, graciousness, like all the things that are in the fruits of who we are?
Yeah. It reminds me a little bit of, there's two different ways I could take this analogy, but the first one that comes to mind is the person who has a headache, so they take some Tylenol, and then now they get a reaction to the Tylenol, so they take another drug to combat that side effect. And then now they take a third drug to take the side effect of the side effect. And the next thing you know, they're on 50 different medications, when ultimately it comes down to, hey, if we just purify what we put into our bodies, if we eat and consume the right things, right, whether that's the media we consume, whether it's the relationships we consume, whatever it might be, we can skip that. And there are so many people who are walking around on a list of medications, and whether those medications are actual medications or those medications are doom scrolling on TikTok till you fall asleep and the phone smashes you in the face. Like, there are a lot of things that happen in the course of our lives that could be removed and resolved if we just go back to this original idea of surrender, and we show up as ourselves, and we're comfortable in that authentic self, right? Not worrying about the judgment or the criticism, just showing up as who we were created to be, and letting that relationship just be as simple and pure as it was intended to.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I would say you got to heal the root. And I think, to your point with the prescription over prescription over prescription, it's eventually we're just masking symptoms, or the symptoms are there, and we're masking them through another form of medication or another form of distraction or another form of something, without actually going to the root. So we have, a God who is our healer, our comforter, our provider, our caretaker, our miracle worker, like all these things. And I understand there is needs for medication and health and all these things. I'm not discounting that by any means. I think that when we start to unravel what is really going on, we have to get down to the core and to the root of things, because if we don't address that, we're just going to be continuing like layers deep into it, where we're constantly changing the dressing, we're changing the bandage, we're changing this, that, and the other. And that's the exhaustion part of chasing something, right? We're still performing, we're still doing. So if we can remove those actions from everything that we're outputting, just think of how much time we can have on the input. What are we doing by just being? And I'm not saying that we don't ever do. We have to do. but being mindful and intentional about the doing. So heal the root and you'll bear the fruit. Is your fruit tired, achy, poor in spirit? Is it rotten? Is it sour? Like, what is coming out of you, right? So what goes in you comes out of you. And
Mhm.
everything, we're consumers. We consume on a daily basis from everything, from our eyes, our ears, our mouth, to like our environments, our skin is breathing, like all these things. So what are we doing each day to take care of our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health and well-being? Are we protecting it from things that we know are damning and not of God, or living in a place where it's not empowering you to shine, right? So we
Right.
really have to challenge ourselves and ask, like, take inventory, personal accountability of all that is and is going on internally and externally in our world, and then run that through the filter.
But I don't think we stop ever to ask ourselves that question, right? We're back in that New York City mode where we're just so busy doing the next thing. There's just so many stimulus happening at the same time. We don't stop to think, hey, what am I putting out in the world? What am I receiving? And what is it actually translating into? I love
Right.
that.
Because it's just a concept of self-awareness. And again, self-awareness, we think that we're aware, but are we truly aware? Like, challenge yourself, like, go layers deep. It's the same process in the philosophy of, like, the who am I. We could say, well, who am I? Oh, well, I'm Rachel. I'm a podcaster. I'm an author, and we could just lead with our roles, our titles, our occupations, our assignments here on Earth. I'm somebody's wife. I'm somebody's mom. I'm somebody's this, right? But that's not really who you are. So then it's like, okay, but who am I? Well, I'm not this. I'm not the great. We've established that. Go again. Who are you? And so when you're peeling back these layers, you're getting down to the core of, like, your core identity, not only of who God says you are, but what are your values? What are your thoughts? What are your interests, your passions? What do you stand for? Like, all of these things are intricacies, and you're not just defined by one thing. You are not one thing. You're a conglomerate of everything from your life's experiences. But we tend to limit ourselves based off of our circumstances and our situations. We limit ourselves based off of our past, our present that is not yet even creating our future yet, but we're still focused on the future side of things, and we're living in this present. Like, why aren't we there now? Well, we haven't even accepted this present. So the way I see it is, like, if we're constantly living in the past, we're dealing with depression, anxiety, right? There's those fears that are holding us back. And then if we're focused so much on the future, it's also causing anxiety because we're trying to create something that hasn't even happened yet. But yet we're robbing today the gift of the present, which is where we can be still. We can turn inward. We can live a slower, intentional life, because it's 24 hours of one day that we're not promised even 1 minute from now. But what can we do today, the here and now, that can set us up for a life of freedom, of fulfillment, of purpose, of passion, all the things we really long for on the other side? But we have to take that intentional time to slow down and get reconnected, tap into our God-given identity, our God-given calling, and our God-given purpose. And this is just coming from that faith-based side. But those who don't have faith in their life, still the same model and principle applies. Who are you? And it's not what the world is going to tell you. It's not the topics of conversation out there in social media. Those are just things that are, like, you might have an interest, or you might have an experience. You might have something about it, but that's not who you are. We don't lead with those roles and identities that we're seeing in today's media. I would never say, hi, I'm Rachel, and just start introducing all the things that are internally about me. That's just weird. Like, you have to,
Sure.
but who is Rachel? You don't have to tell people who you are. You show people who you are.
Mm. So let me ask you a question, and this question is going to be a bit like walking on the edge of a blade. But one of the things that I see happen a lot, and I want your feedback on this, is if we're talking about empowering women, right, as a topic which I know is important to you, how do you navigate the conversation between what they were called to do and what they feel that they need to do to be a powerful woman? Because I think that there is this societal expectation placed on women that, hey, for a long time you were not considered equal to men. Okay, so now there's a lot of people who are trying to prove how strong and powerful that they are, by going out there and competing in the corporate world or trying to do whatever it is that they feel called to do, where that may not be their actual true calling. Right? So we see a lot of people who now sacrifice the most important years of their life to go pursue this C-level position to say that, hey, I am as powerful and I did this thing, where that may not be their calling. Hey, if they were called to be a parent, if they're called to be whatever the thing is. I think our current society has diminished the value of being a mom, of giving birth to a child. To me, hey, if you can give birth to a child and raise a kid, take the rest of your life off if you want to. You've done a really freaking cool thing. Like, we don't celebrate that enough, where I think that now it's become this thing that they need bigger, better, more, where we are filling this void that doesn't need to exist if we just allow ourselves to be who we were called to be. Does that make sense?
It does. And if I understand correctly, so I'm going to try to tackle this question just in my own thoughts here, is that we as women don't need to be equals. There's no, it's not a competition. It's not even a comparison. We're created the way that we are for a reason. And when you look at relationships between men and women, it's there for complementary things, right? So I cannot be my husband and my husband cannot be me, and I don't ever expect to be. And it's just something you accept. It's in tandem. There's an ebb and flow. We're created for this purpose. And so finding yourself where you're hustling to get to the top and you've essentially compromised or have given up on some of the things that God has called you to, because in your own pursuit, and I'm saying this for my own, like I've done this. I went on this path over here because I thought this was the shiny object, and it was, colored a little bit like my work. And so I was just like thinking, oh, well, I must be on the right path. I'm pursuing my purpose, until I realized this is hard. This is exhausting. Why am I being met with locked door after locked door after locked door? Like, eventually we realize we're not even on the same path. And that's where we have to call ourselves back in and say, listen, maybe the path that we're pursuing isn't for us. So why don't we do a check-in? Sometimes, again, the daily check-ins that we have with God, God's not always going to be vocal and say, well, you take the first left and it's around the corner. I wish he was, but that's not how God works, right? If he gave me the clear map, come out of my mother's womb and here you go. Here's your blueprint. Here's your map. Great. I got my assignment. I would say, peace out, God. I don't need you because I got the blueprint. Right. So if we had all the answers, where would we have the need for God? We don't. So the equality that we're constantly fighting for, I think, is very self-induced. We've called that in, that we believe that we have to be this thing. But again, goes back to, where did these beliefs come from? Who put this pressure on us? Who told us we had to do these things? And so when you start questioning, unravel all the thoughts and beliefs and the narratives that have been placed on this world, and start internalizing them and asking those questions, because you're going to realize none of that came from you.
Yeah.
It was pressure put upon us to perform at a level that we're not capable of. Not everyone is going to be the top 1%. But yet we live in a world, and especially if we look at online and social media, it's like, but if you're not at that 1%, people don't take you serious. They're not going to buy from you. They're not going to listen to you. You're not going to be the expert. You're not going to be this. And it's like, okay, great. Could we have learned from all these other people that have passed on before us, our predecessors who have walked a path similar to us? You're going to say that value doesn't lie there? Oh, there's value in everything that we've experienced. But it's the moment that we can let go of what should be and just accept what is. And sometimes that's a hard pill to swallow, because our realities are quite different. And we can say, but I've just wasted 20 years trying to pursue this thing. Hey, you know what? 20 years, and glad that you found that awareness now, because it could have been 40. It could have been 60. However many years it could have taken for you to get to that point. But the reality is now that 20 years, what have you learned in that 20 years that got you to that point that awareness came up? Right. So now you can correct course. You can change the trajectory of your life. But again, what does God call you to do? What is the assignment he's here for? And tap into who you are in this season of life. And now you can say, oh, you know what? I just got strengthened in this because I had to overcome this challenge. I have now this tool in my tool belt because X, Y, and Z. And so now you're going to filtrate everything you've experienced. And now you're just looking at pieces to put into your tool belt to equip you for the next assignment.
Yeah. I love it. I love how you talk there about trying to figure out who's more important, like the struggle of who's better, who's bigger, and why are we trying to be quote unquote equal in the first place, because we are not. And I think it's a frailty of men, I believe, a lot, where we feel weak and insignificant if we are not alpha, if we are not bigger, better, stronger than the woman in every possible regard. And a lot of times we fall back to this, the wife is supposed to submit to the husband thing, and then we kind of skip the rest of it because we feel like, well, we should just stick to that part because that part sounds cool. And, I feel like if you want to look at a great relationship, if you want to look at what it means to be a great husband, to be a great leader, you have to do what Christ did for the church. And what did he do for the church? He gave up his life for the church.
Right.
And like
we have taken the word submission and put a cookie cutter label on it. What's
right.
surrender? Submission? It's a form of surrender, relinquish control. I'll just stand here and look pretty, and that's what the female aspect of it. But that's because we've taken the word and manipulated it, right? So we put our own spin on it for our own purposes.
Yeah.
But that's not what submission is.
It's really padding our own ego and our insecurities and making us feel like I am that alpha male, right? I am the provider. I am all these things. And I have to do that because you can't, and you're weak and frail. And I think that's where a lot of this contention comes from, where it becomes this competition of who suffers more, right? Who's got the harder day? Who's more tired? Who's whatever. And it's crazy that we are trying to compare these things when it should be, hey, each of you, husband and wife, have very different callings, have very different utility, have very different purposes, have very different struggles. Like if you could just celebrate each other for who they are and not try and compare against each other, this would be so much easier.
Right. And that's what I was talking about. I was like, even, for my husband and I, we're two different people. And it's taken years to kind of figure this out, because you're so ingrained in wanting an outcome or an expectation. He's ingrained with wanting an outcome and an expectation. But I can't always meet those, and he can't always meet mine. So it's like, then there becomes this discontentment, this argument, when I'm wondering, why can't he be the man that I married, or the one I wanted him to be? And it's like sometimes our false disillusion or our fantasy of this version that we have created, because we see, maybe in the media, of what a beautiful marriage looks like, or we see somebody who's living that ideal marriage, but we don't know what happens behind closed doors. So we're giving this false narrative and this disillusion of what could be, but that's really not what reality is. So what is reality? So going back to the word, yes, there's submission. Submission doesn't make you a weak individual. It just means that you're honoring and respecting your husband. And so if we go into Ephesians, it's about love and respect, right? So men want to feel respected to earn love, like that, or to feel loved. And women want to feel loved to feel respected. So it's a cycle that we go back and forth on. And I think we can look at that context even for any relationship, because when you're holding that space and just actively listening, and you're just no judgment, you're meeting that person where they're at, and they're feeling seen, they're feeling respected, they're feeling heard, right? It's a form of all these things, which translates into love and respect. So now when we look at relationships, it's not about the power and control that you can have over somebody to get to the outcome of this vision and version of what should be, because that's what the world tells you to. Because not every marriage is going to be that way. I mean, I'm sure that my marriage is completely different than your marriage, but it's like, but we have two men and two women together. And if we're following the same principles in the book, shouldn't we have the same outcome? Absolutely not. That's not how God didn't design me to be like your wife and you to be like my husband. We're two different, unique people. We're going to have a different experience in life, but we can still honor that marriage and that relationship, because biblically speaking, it's the same principles that have to be applied in both.
Yeah, I agree. What do you think men can do better to support and empower their wives?
Listen, that's a big piece, and understanding. So I think that when men, let me put it this way, women have a lot. We're a lot. I'm not lying. Like, there's a lot. We got a lot of thoughts, a lot of obligations, a lot of responsibilities, with a lot of pressure on us, because just us, we are women that can handle so much more. And that's why I said we're not trying to be equal. So it's almost asking the men to step into a woman's role and try to do it all and be it all and have it all. even though that's the world's set expectation for women on a performance base. But naturally speaking, like women, we just are very innate and in tune. We just have constantly scanning, like we're always on, but we don't have to act and perform on those things. So when women, for example, when something comes into our space, into our internal space, we just want to share it with somebody. Remember, the first person to tell somebody, it's usually our husbands or the first person who comes in, and we're super excited. And what I've learned, even in my own relationship with my husband, is like, I got a lot to say, but not everything has to be acted on. Not everything has to be fixed. Not everything is a problem to be solved. I just want to be heard. So one of the greatest things I've heard is like, women just vent. It's just a safe space to vent. And men, they're always scanning. How can I fix it? How can I solve it? What does she need from me? And what if the communication was just like, hey, I just need a space just to vent. There's nothing you have to do. Just listen to me. That's it. Lets my husband off the hook because he does not have to perform. He doesn't have to do, and he doesn't have to solve or fix. Me, I don't have to control. I don't have to manipulate. I don't have to get an outcome. I just want to dump this out. It's out of me. It's a form of venting. He understands now, and now gives him an insight of what is going on in my day or my thought processes. But not everything is good or bad. It's just, it is. And that was one of the biggest things that my husband and I, because I would feel so misunderstood, and he's over here catching on to the first thing I said, thinking he's got to fix it. And he can't even get past it because there's a laundry list of other things that are being said. And when we now adapted this into our marriage, he understands that I don't always have to preface everything. Babe, it's not, I don't need you to fix anything. Let me just vent. Now, when he sees me in this place, he's like, okay, she's just in a place where she just needs to be heard. There might be something important as an FYI, but there's nothing that I physically have to go do. And so that allows the husband to relax into this marriage because there's no performance. And as a woman, she's feeling seen and heard. So now she's validated, and she's now in a place where she feels loved because she was heard and seen.
Mm. So what I'm hearing you say there is it's a lot about putting yourself second in the relationship and putting the other person first in their needs and their communication, not for the people-pleasing aspect we talked about before, but for the sake of building a union where each person is focused on caring for the other person as they need to be cared for. And that might look a little bit different every day, but not just saying, I think that there's this desire as men sometimes to over-explain things, right? Where we feel like we need to justify and explain everything, where oftentimes it's not about the intentionality of why I did what I did, but it's about sort of justifying the feeling on the other side. Right? I can tell you 6 ways from Sunday why I did what I did, but the reason why I did that doesn't necessarily matter if it hurt you in some sort of way. You want to know that I understand that you're feeling hurt, not necessarily sit there and listen to 48 reasons why I did what I did. You want me to understand your feeling. We could talk about the rest later. Right. Do I understand that correctly?
100%. Right. And that's where it's, having those pretenses or just having those honest conversations, because sometimes communication is, I would say actually communication is one of the biggest things in any relationship, because if we're not honest and clear about what our intentions are, they can be misconstrued based off of somebody else's experience or past versions of that. And so now it can feel like an attack versus, oh, she's just venting. I could just tune one ear out. And I tell my husband sometimes, I'm like, listen, just be a fly on the wall. I don't even care if you say anything. I just need a safe space that I can dump out whatever I need to say. Or if there's something that's serious, I'd be like, hey, listen, we need to talk about this. And so it's just being clear in your communication so that the pretenses are met on both sides, instead of feeling like I'm being attacked or he's attacking me on the defense and vice versa. And that had been a big game changer in our marriage. But to your point, yeah, I mean, we want to know that we're emotionally seen, that we're being emotionally held, that we have the safe space, that we can feel that we can just be us and not being judged or reprimanded or told that, like, why are you caring about this stuff? It's so, because I don't care if it's irrelevant. It's meaningful to me, or else I wouldn't be talking about it. Can you just lend it a compassionate and understanding ear? Because there might be something I say in there that is valid. And now, you being my husband, who is the lead of the head of the household, you can now make a correct call or judgment or discernment or whatever that is, so that I don't have to go experience it again. Because now I'm being seen and heard. And vice versa. The same with him. He can bring up a concern and I'll be like, oh, okay, I didn't realize that that had impacted or you had felt that way. And so now we can make these small little changes. But it's about also being, like the head of the house as the male is being respected. And the submission is now, okay, well, I understand now where my husband's coming from. And these roles are vice versa. It's not one or the other. It's not like men only can be respected, women can only be loved, and we have to be submissive. I'm saying this in context because it's a tandem. It's this dance that we're doing in life where the two become one. So when I'm ebbing, he's flowing, and vice versa. There's just days that maybe he's picking up 80% of the weight of this marriage, and there's days that I'm picking up 80%. So it's just in tandem with the conversation and being crystal clear on it. But I think it's important to go back to two individuals that are committed to doing the inner work so that your external reflects the internal. But what is the internal? And that is where it's filled with the word of God.
I want to go back to something that you just said there about the man being the head of the house, because I feel like a lot of people could misconstrue that to mean the man is more important.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely. And if the man is called to be the head, what is the woman called to be?
We're all the body of Christ.
So ultimately, which one is more important? Yeah, it's not the man.
I don't think I have the answer, because I don't have the hierarchy of prioritization and the importance of it, but I think that both are equally important.
Well, the answer there is they need to move in unison.
Right.
They need to
there's
move.
one or the other. There's an importance of maybe a situation or
Right.
a thing that's happening in the relationship. But when two become one, that's what we're working towards, that one outcome, one goal.
Right. And that's the point I'm trying to drive home there, is it's not this expectation that the man is more important because he's the head of the house. Right? The head without the heart is useless. And I believe if we start understanding that they have to be properly aligned and they have to move in unison, we stop worrying about who's more important and we start focusing on where we're moving together. And I think that's the lesson that we need to learn there, is it's not a competition about who's more important, who is more powerful, who has more stress and more struggle and more whatever. Like when we start focusing on, hey, each one is really important at their function, let's just start functioning together, then we can really start to really blossom. And I think that's the part that we need to really look at, is like, hey, we are called for very different purposes. We can't fulfill each other's shoes. We should stop trying to be each other and start being ourselves. And I think, to bring this all the way back to where we started, really understanding who we are authentically is number one for that, right? Where we can show up as ourselves. It's such a freeing feeling and leads to so much goodness.
Right. And then that question goes back, who are you?
Yeah.
The who I am today will not be the same person I am 5 years from now, 10 years. And the same version of who I was 10 years ago is not the same. So it's what I see is like, with marriage or relationships, it all starts again with self, the relationship you have with yourself. Are you honest with yourself? Can you sit in your silence and in your own mess and misery and have a real constructive, honest conversation? It's quite painful to sit in the silence of yourself. It's quite painful to go explore those areas, because we know what's underneath. We know what's hidden behind those dark corners. We know what we tucked away in that closet. Do we want to face that? But I say yes, because yes, it's painful, it's scary, it sucks temporarily. But if we don't face it, we're masking it. We're constantly trying to look for solutions to solve things that we are unwilling to accept and face in the past. Right. And so that's where the whole I am comes in, is that, you have to go back to those places, because without acknowledging them to heal and move through them, then what are we doing? We're just doing a dance with the skeletons in the closet. Right. So now we're living this like secret life, or trying to live this public life in a marriage that we're essentially expecting our partner to fix and heal some of the stuff that we haven't even been willing to address.
Yeah. Well, I think you said it really beautifully too before, and that you want to really heal the roots, you can bear the fruit.
100%.
Right. And that's ultimately what this is. Hey, if you're not willing to have that conversation, which is going to be painful, it's going to be way more painful later on right? Because it's not going to go away. At a certain point, that bill is going to be due, and it's going to be even more expensive than it was had you just healed it the first time.
Right.
And I think we need to really understand that, to just sit in that discomfort and own it for what it is, because it's only going to get worse if we ignore it. It's not going to just go away.
Exactly. And that's why I go back to communication as well. If we don't know what we're asking, then we can't ask. If we don't know what we're healing, we cannot heal. If we can't address what it is that we're after, how do we know where we're going and what we're after? Right. So a lot of this, again, I've taken this whole external world of something that you're chasing externally and flipping it on its head and taking a deep dive internally. So everything that I create, do, and be, and all the things that are in there are all stemming from internal. I have been at a place where I don't look externally for anything other than, okay, there's, it's confirmation I'm moving in the right direction.
Right.
But I'm not trying to have the world please or tell me I'm enough. I don't need that.
I love that. And I want to honor you for the work that you do and for the time that you spent here with us today, because it has been a really enjoyable conversation. And I do believe that we've highlighted some things that will help some people live a better, fuller, happier life. Where can people find you if they'd like to talk more?
Yes, you can find me on all social media platforms. I am Rachel Brooks. My website is I am Rachel Brooks. And you can get a copy of my book everywhere that books are sold online. And if you don't want to read it, I'll read it to you on Audible. So the title of the book is Chasing Perfection, A Journey to Healing, Fitness, and Self-Love.
Love it. Thank you again. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Hey, before you go, can I pray for you real quick? Dear Heavenly Father, I want to thank you for this day. I want to thank you for Rachel, our guest. I want to thank you for all of the experiences that she's gone through, and mostly for her willingness to come back and share to help other people find the joy in their life and not have to feel like they need to compete to win, but rather to surrender, to submit, to just be their authentic self. Father, I ask that the person listening to this right now, that you fill them with the wisdom to see their authentic self and the courage to surrender and submit in their own life, to live a life as you've designed them to live, and not feel this need to constantly compete and compare and look for ego and pride as a way to survive, but rather for us to show up in our own lives and to humble ourselves, to continue to show up in the life that you've given us in this very day and make the most of this day for what it was designed to be. And that may not be under our control. It may not be under our direct understanding, but it's going to be exactly as it was intended to be. And I ask that you continue to encourage the person listening to this conversation right now, that they see that this moment in time right now is used for their good. It may not make sense. We may not understand. It may not look and feel like we want it to feel. It may not be fast enough for our desires. It may not be exactly worded the way that we want it to be worded. But we know that in time it will be used for our good. And I ask you to continue to increase their faith, their heart, their compassion, their authenticity. And in time, all of these things will be made clear. Father, we ask all these things in your name. Amen. I love you.